6:47 on April the 23rd, 2025, a U.S. destroyer lit up the Taiwan Strait like a flare in a dark alley, daring Beijing to blink first on China's Navy Day. The Taiwan Strait was unnervingly still. Normally, its lanes hum with tankers, patrol arcs, and a constant background of politics in motion. It's $3 trillion in annual trade crisscrossing over 100 shipping lanes. But this holiday morning, the air hung heavy, like the breath before a punch. Then USS William P. Lawrence flicked on its transponder. Its digital voice carried one simple, loud message across the ether: "We're here." It was a deliberate thunderclap timed for April 23rd, China's Navy Day. Almost immediately, engines roared. From a base just 45 nautical miles inland, Chinese J-16 multi-role fighters clawed into the sky. Twin engines, Mach 2 at altitude, bristling with sensors and missiles, streaked toward the U.S. destroyer. But the loadout told the real story. Each jet carried 4 short-range PL-10s and 2 PL-15 BVR missiles, air-to-air weapons, not ship killers. A signal wrapped in steel that this wasn't about sinking a destroyer. It was about owning the air. At 7:02 aboard the Lawrence, Aegis radar had already painted them. SPY-1D tracked every throttle push, every split in formation. Data was fed through Link 16, tying into the broader network. The J-16S broke into combat pairs, executing bracket maneuvers. Left, right, above, behind, a geometry designed to stretch U.S. attention thin. Each pass pulled tighter, like sharks circling a cage, teeth hidden but close enough to count. As the J-16s executed their bracket maneuvers, the USS Lawrence's CIC operators were already running predictive algorithms. Every roll, climb, and dive was feeding instantaneous calculations into the Aegis combat system. The SPY-1D radar not only tracked position, but also analyzed wingtip vortices, engine heat signatures, and radar emission patterns, effectively reading the pilot's intentions before they could react. On the bridge, watch officers cross-referenced this data with Link 16 feeds from nearby carrier air wings, creating a 3-dimensional map of both air and surface threats. The Chinese pilots, aware they were being observed, tried subtle electronic countermeasures, brief radar blanks, momentary AESA sweeps, but Lawrence's electronic support measures picked up even the faintest anomaly. Each maneuver by the jets was catalogued. Approach angles, speed bursts, maximum G-turns, and evasive loops, all logged for later analysis. From 500 feet above the waves to 20,000 feet at the apex of a dive, the strait became a laboratory for tactical behavior, a high-stakes chessboard of motion and counter-motion where neither side made a single aggressive misstep. Discipline, timing, and raw data collection dominated the encounter as much as altitude or speed. At 7:11, one lead J-16 inverted at 20,000 feet, dove hard, then leveled just 500 feet above the waves, pointed straight at the destroyer in a mock attack run. The optics screamed strike, but the payload whispered, "Not today." 2 minutes later, a second fighter mirrored high and offset, completing a pincer. The goal was to compress decision-making, pressure the U.S. into broadcasting weakness. But the Lawrence didn't blink. At 7:15, inside CIC fire control solutions for each jet were already validated. Phalanx CIWS spun, quiet but ready. SM-2 intercept envelopes plotted on screen. One wrong turn and any J-16 in the bracket could become wreckage in seconds, but readiness isn't provocation. The destroyer held course, posture steady. Then, new radar paint. A planned Type 052D destroyer pushed in from the east, closing vector like a silent bodyguard. 4 J-16 became 8. Air and sea pressure boxed in the U.S. ship, the way predators isolate prey before deciding what to do with it. At 7:28, merchant traffic reacted. Tankers and container captains pinged each other on secure channels, replotting courses to safer lanes. AIS transponders winked dark one by one. The world's busiest corridor began to look like a ghost lane. Billions of dollars in cargo now rode the pause button. Beijing tightened the screws. One J-16 slashed past the starboard beam at 120 feet, barely 200 feet off the hull, a move that would have made even Cold War pilots raise eyebrows. Seconds later, another crossed the port side, vectors so tight they tripped collision alarms. A third jet pulled vertical, punched through the sound barrier barely 1,000 feet overhead. The sonic crack hit like a whip across the destroyer's deck. Steel vibrated. Coffee mugs rattled. Sailors, who drilled through every crisis, still felt the weight. This wasn't just to be seen or heard. It was meant to be felt. At 7:39, then came electronic warfare. Screens flickered. Radar tracks ghosted for seconds. It was not a cyber strike, but a deliberate bump, like tapping a car's bumper at a red light. Close, deliberate, reckless enough to make you wonder if the next move would be worse. Yet still, no weapons were fired. On both sides, discipline held. Pilots and watch officers had already run every scenario, and each one ended ugly. Escalation no capital wanted to explain to markets on Monday morning. At 8:20, finally, the tempo broke. Chinese fighters began climbing, pairs breaking off, peeling away in slow arcs. Not retreating, just concluding. The planned destroyer shifted from intercept to parallel escort, shadowing without threat. At 8:30, the Strait exhaled. Neither side had fired a shot, yet the sky had carried more strategic weight than 100 press conferences. It was deterrence by display, a duel of nerves, played out in altitude stacks and radar sweeps. Because this was never just about a ship or a strait or a date on a calendar. It was about credibility. Beijing proved it could humiliate without escalating. Washington proved it could not be intimidated at all. And the world watched, some with popcorn, some with spreadsheets. They knew that one day, one pilot, one radar officer, one misunderstood burst of static could flip this same choreography to screaming missiles. So join us. Tell us what you think in the comments. And subscribe for the truth behind the world's tensest encounters before they make tomorrow's headlines.